All right. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started here in a minute. I just wanted to double check audio before everything started off. So, depends. If you can't hear me very well, let me know. I'll try and make some adjustments. Just type it into the chat window over to the right, and we'll get started here. Got Joaquin on the line with me, and so once it hits one, which it looks like it just did, so we'll get started. Um, Thank you everybody for joining us today. Um, we're really excited to kick this off. Today is it's an exciting time going into the new year. Um, there's so many challenges when it comes to multifamily companies and social media. Really, today we're talking multifamily brand equity and social media, and it really is oh my. Just talking to someone yesterday with some interesting issues or concerns about social media in the multifamily space that we'll probably talk about here in a bit. But kind of wanted to talk about why this webinar, why this, why are we getting started? Um, Companies with more than one location, whether it's property management companies or others, they have trouble getting engagement and results out of social media, particularly at the property level. Uh, there's several reasons for that, but part of it is just because often they're scared on how to do it. They don't have the processes in place because they're scared that they're not going to be able to protect their brand. They're not going to be able to train their people well enough, um, and that if they don't train them right, they don't protect their brand, that they're going to have negative perception, that people are going to give them better reviews, and all sorts of different things. So there's really this issue. So I'm Tim Flint, president of Resident Spark. Uh, Today we have on the line with us Joaquin Jimenez, and is a technology partner of ours, and is at LavaSurf. And so together we formed and we created a new product called Spark Social that we'll talk about a little bit later. But today it's really just how do you handle it? Internally, what are your processes for handling all of this? So before we get started, I did want to make a short announcement. The Multifamily Social Media Summit is coming up, and it's in Napa on January 31st and February 2nd. I will actually be there to speak that day. Um, okay, people are saying my audio is cutting in and out. I'll try and see what I can do a little better. Um, so, our with the social media summit, I'll be speaking about how to automate Facebook advertising. So there's a promo code. We'll send it out after as well. And there's a $50 off promo code that you can sign up for if you want to head out to Napa and learn all about social media. There's going to be a whole number of other speakers out there as well. Um, with that, let's go to a poll, and and Joaquin, you can kind of hop in on this as well. So our question to start us off is, what scares you the most about social media? So I'm going to put up this poll that you guys can come in and respond to. So what scares you most? Is it negative reviews from prospects or residents, property managers not properly representing the brand, not getting enough engagement? Uh, it becomes a waste of time and effort. Like, we're just doing all this stuff and nothing's coming from it. Um, or is there another reason? One of the reasons I heard just yesterday from someone I was talking to is they have some kind of Class C properties, and if they have to evict somebody, or if someone's late on their rent and they have to hound them about rent payment, if they have to hound them about all of that, then they know they're going to get a negative review no matter what they do, so they don't engage at all. Shell, LB, thank you for that. Your time involved to properly engage matters a lot too. Yeah, I can see why that is, because if we don't have the time, we feel like we're not giving it enough. So maybe we can kind of talk through some ways to handle some of that today. But looks like Joaquin, most of the people are saying they're worried about the brand. About 75% of you, 25% are looking at negative reviews from prospects or residents, and then the rest are not getting enough engagement, or it becomes a waste of time and effort. So with that, Joaquin, I'll let you kind of take things over from here.
Okay, just want to make a If not, just chat in and we'll make adjustments. So we're moving on from the poll. I just want to say that those numbers, 75% worried about brand. Um, I think Shelby mentioned time involved to actually engage with people. That's more of a unique one or less common, but that does exist. We'll discuss that throughout the presentation today. But most of us are worried about the brand or what happens with reviews, et cetera. So we'll cover all those topics and feel at ease. You're not alone with those concerns. Um, those concerns, however, come in the context of the marketplace that we live in today, what we call the on-demand economy. If you think back to the days of, if you can date yourself that way, to dial-up internet, and then there was broadband, and uh, the way we engage with the internet, it's very different than the way we do it today. Um, we want what we want, when we want it, where we want it. Meaning, I want whatever message I want, whatever uh, advertisement I may want or help um, in the moment, right, on demand, wherever I may be, whether in a store, at a restaurant, at home, it doesn't matter. And that immediacy changes the landscape in the way we need to approach um, our communities. So it presents us with a specific need, the need to be able to engage with our local community um, and give them the messages that they want and need in that time frame, when they want it, where they want it, how they want it, etc. So there's a challenge that comes to play. Um, this is a way of looking at the social media landscape, especially in property management. There's, in general, for social media, there's a lot of things that need to be done. Content needs to be created. And I don't want to overwhelm you with this, but this is presenting the landscape, publishing that content, listening to your local community, and then moderating those conversations, which is what Shelby mentioned earlier. There's the ability to promote those things or those posts or whatever it may be, advertising socially. What does that look like? And then all the data that we need to analyze and see what's effective, what's not effective. You multiply that times all the different social media outlets. Which ones are most important to me? When do I post on Facebook versus Instagram? So on and so forth. Um, in addition to that, there are all the different review platforms that people use. Multiply that by all the properties that you have to manage, it can be quite overwhelming, which usually leads to a paralysis, a fear, right? That we all face. And most of us were talking about, well, in the midst of all that needs to be done, how is my brand messaging, its image going to be represented? Is it going to be represented properly? So, um, unfortunately or fortunately, um, those fears exist, but there's another side of that coin. And the other side of that coin is that local is where the magic happens. At the property level is where the magic happens. And there's been numerous studies to show this. And I'm just going to highlight a couple things real quick, and we'll move on from that. We have our own internal data that shows these same things. Actually, some of our internal data shows much higher results by localizing your message and having that message be at the property level. But Facebook itself has shown that local pages significantly outperform corporate pages. In this case, 346%. Other um, studies show significant increase in marketing reach and engagement that happens when you localize the message or actually localize social media at the property level. So moving on from that, I'm going to show you a couple examples of what that might look like. So this is a local post at the property level, and you'll notice that it has to do with a Halloween decoration challenge in that community. And it starts out with, "Do you see your house?" But more important than that, I want to know there's actual engagement here. People are participating, they're sharing, they're commenting. It's a truly local post. It was corporate approved, but it got engagement. Another example, one at the local pool at that community got a lot of engagement. And if you'll notice, it's this week will be the perfect week to play at the pool, right? Obviously, you can't manage weather or the knowledge of the weather from corporate. That's something that emanates from local. And so these posts are tend to be much more effective. Not that local posts can't be effective when they're driven down to the local level, but they tend to outperform um, our other efforts. So, what does that mean? How do I involve my property managers, or if it's the leasing agent, whoever it is at the local level, at the property level, in social media, but still alleviate the fears that I have with social, right? My brand integrity, my brand messaging, the image that we try and portray. Well, there's a few different approaches, and we're going to cover those. So actually want to first remind you of the challenge, and now we're going to talk about some of your concerns with the challenge. So um, you guys mentioned this. Well, what about my messaging? What about my image? What about my control? How do I actually distribute this? Um, what if there's a public relations nightmare that's the outcome of social media? These are all fears that we face, and they're natural, they're normal. We all face them if we have any kind of multi anything business. What if I don't have the resources to do this? We can't imagine doing this. So obviously, technology is going to come into play, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But then on the other side, there's the property manager side of the coin. They are really local. They are connected to the local community, but our concerns start to creep in again. What if they're not good at social media? What if they don't post often enough? What if they engage back in a way that's, like, quite frankly, not that good or representative of the way I want to represent my brand? Um, so these are the nightmares we're talking about. Here's an example of a company that at their local pages, this is what's being posted. Um, Immediately, all the concerns pop up. I do want to slip in the caveat that this is an organization that has not taken control of their local page. What happens in social media is a local page can be created with or without your approval. So if you don't take control of this, this is actually what can happen without you having any idea that it's going on, because you're not monitoring everything. You're not actually creating a page for that community. So the community actually does it on its own. And there's no one moderating, no one participating, this can happen without um, corporate knowledge or even local knowledge. Um, on the other side of this coin is the property manager taking over. Once again, truly local, connected, etc. But we have our concerns. Are they going to be good enough? Well, this is someone making a boomerang post or video of them coming out behind this package and mentioning that it's something that people can connect to. So that's what happens when you start to enable, not just take control, but enable the property to be be active in social media. So what are our options? They're pretty simple, really. Do nothing, which we've already discussed. Doing nothing, sticking our head in the sand, really doesn't work. Um, we could hire a team, whether that be an external agency or build a team in house. And let's be honest, um, most of us don't have the budget to do that um, for other things that we want to do, much less for social media. So we're left with a few different options. I can exercise my top-down control, corporate only. Um, I can do a bottom-up approach with the local property managing their social media on their own, or I can leverage technology to provide some kind of integrated solution. So let's before we go into these options, let's take another quick poll. Uh, Shelby already mentioned this, the time it takes, but I don't know. Did the survey end? Oh, there we go. I'm
Yep,
going to
I'm getting it up
participate.
there.
Okay, great. I'm going to participate in the survey as well. Um, and I'm going
Yes.
to do it the way that most people do it.
So, so yeah, going with the survey, how are you responding to questions, comments, or reviews on your local pages currently? So, is it a corporate handles it? Is it the local property managers or the leasing agents handling it? No, we don't have anybody responding, or anyone can respond. All right, we'll give you another few seconds on this one. Um, Feel free to type another comment in the box too if you have other ideas, something that we might have missed in this survey. Um, so if everyone's voted, I'm going to end voting and then share the results here real quick. Um, so we have, so what we're seeing here is for most of you, corporates handling the responses. Some of you do have local property managers or leasing agents handling the responses. Um, Debbie over here says that they've partnered with a third-party company to help with responses that alerts the properties and corporate, so TISA as well. So yeah, so there's other ways to handle that as well. So, but yeah, I'll turn things back over to Joaquin.
Okay, so I actually responded with no one responds because that's what we see most often. Um, and that's typically what the data shows, is that we may take an approach of, oh, we're going to handle it corporately, at the corporate level. We're going to handle it at the property level, let them do it. Um, Unless you hire someone to do it, often what happens is because of the inability to take the time to do it, it just doesn't happen. And the data shows that. We may do it some of the time, but we may actually only be responding to 10% of the comments or 20% of the reviews or whatever it may be. And if you go back and you think about a conversation, when a conversation is taking place, if no one's responding to you, you stop talking. At least most of us do. Some of us, continue talking anyways, like I am right now. But most of us stop or end the conversation because there's really no conversation happening. So it's interesting to see the responses here and according to the data that I typically see on a daily basis. So we've done the poll, and we're going to go over our options. Please understand that we're all in different places. We all grow up, we end up crawling, then we end up walking, then we end up running. But that's the process that we go through. We're going to suggest something similar here with social media. And we hope that at least we plant in your mind, what's going to be my strategy? How am I going to crawl, walk, run into this process? Because social media is not going to go away. It's only going to continue to get stronger. So we're going to address the first option. Okay, the first real option, not do nothing, but the first real option of, okay, I'm going to exercise corporate control. You get to decide, whatever option you choose, what your crawl, walk, run approach looks like. What does it mean to crawl? So for most people, they exercise corporate control, lock down the rights and permissions, if you will, social media, and then they start testing messaging at the local level, maybe training a few people, and then they roll out. So we're going to look at what that looks like in detail. So first of all, with corporate control, there's advantages and disadvantages. The obvious advantage is you get to control the messaging. So that's obvious, right? Um, Equally obvious is, or what ends up being seen is, I do get to control my messaging, but nobody wants to engage with the man behind the mirror. They want to engage with someone that's right there in front of them in their local community. So um, their audience is less engaged with them with top-down control. But we do have benefits of alleviating our fears. The next thing with top-down control is, well, what does it actually look like? Well, the details are we're publishing or making posts, creating posts from corporate. We may be pushing down to the local level, or even if we're leveraging technology, localizing some of those posts through technology. We might centralize our response to reviews and to social messages. And to do that, you have to have a technology that makes it easy for you to distribute posts to your 12 properties, 48 properties, or 120 properties, whatever it may be. You need to be able to localize and distribute those posts in a scalable manner. You need to be able to restrict rights and permissions on these social media platforms. And you need something that allows you to scalably centralize, and those capabilities do exist. But to exercise good corporate control from a top-down approach, that's what you need. So moving beyond that, we've talked about the advantages, disadvantages, looked at what it looks like. What about the opposite approach? We'll go to the other end of the spectrum, a swing of the pendulum, if you will. Let's just pretend we're going to execute a bottom-up approach. The property manager takes over social media. Well, it's going to be really localized. You're going to get real engagement with your local community. However, you can still also oversee what's actually happening at the local level. Once again, leveraging technology. Some of the disadvantages, if you take a pure bottom-up approach, is I let go a little bit of my control. My messaging is at risk because I'm leaving it completely in the hands of the property, of whoever's taking ownership of that at the property level. And this is an important point, I can't guarantee the frequency at which they post or how quickly they respond to conversations, etc. So let's look at what it looks like. Well, here's this really local post, a holidays post. These are people that are going to be seen and are going to be known. This requires training. It requires giving over access to the social media platforms. And it can also include approvals, meaning the property manager schedules this post and you approve it through the use of technology. Obviously, you need to have a platform that allows you to limit rights and provides approval mechanisms to be able to actually execute this. Here's a corporate post that is actually localized and pushed down. So it's applying now for off December rent, etc. It's partially local, it's been corporate approved, and is somewhat effective. So we've talked about the two extremes, top-down approach, bottom-up approach. What's in the middle? It's the integrated approach, and this is where the flexibility really comes, where you can really crawl, walk, run, and actually do all three approaches, depending on how you want to roll out. The great thing about this is you choose your pace. You choose how quickly you want to move from crawling to running. You exercise as much control and engage as much as you want, and you enable the local property as much as you want. There is actually a lower risk by doing this, and this is what really brings out that local engagement, that local community that we all want to foster. Unfortunately, there's another side of this coin, right? The disadvantages that come with the necessary training. You do have to plan and actually map out, how do I want to crawl, walk, run? Who am I going to give access to? How am I going to schedule in approvals? Those kinds of things. And what is my training going to look like? Well, someone asked me recently, well, how do I train? What is that going to look like? And if someone has that question at the end, we definitely want to address that. Determining then also who has access and at what level. So the integrated approach, typically looks like this in terms of phases. Typically, most start out with exercising corporate control. Then, as they figure out how they want to execute an integrated approach, they may start a little pilot with a few properties, see how they do, train others, and then enable those access and that access, and then train and then roll out from there. It's important to leverage technology to maintain your control, but still enable social media at the property level. So we're going to switch over now. We're going to talk a little bit about the technology, and Tim's going to address the technology with you guys. And I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, Tim.
Yeah. So when it comes to integrating it, how do we save? Technology is one of the biggest keys to helping us save time, so that we actually have time to be engaged. With Spark Social by Resident Spark, what we is a way to easily manage all of your properties in one place. So you can either exercise as Joaquin mentioned, a top-down or a bottom-up or an integrated approach through this. And there's several ways and several of the tools that make this work. So obviously you have calendar publishing. You have calendar and publishing. So you're able to publish a post across everything. So you're going to be able to publish that post across every single one of your properties. So that's really kind of a top-down approach, just push out the same thing to everybody. But you can also push it out and localize that post. So you can also basically localize that post with certain different types of variables. Centralized content library. So you can also, from a bottom-up approach, create corporate content that's already pre-approved, and then your locals can choose when to send that up. Also, with that content library, there can be other approvals. So you can make it so that the local property manager, they put something up, and then the corporate can say, yeah, this is clear and this is good, and we can approve that. So whether that's with Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram is on the way. So that's kind of that one. I know we're breaking up a little bit, so I'm trying to hold this mic a little closer, and hopefully things will work out. So we're almost through and also then doing the same thing with reviews. So not just pulling in Facebook reviews and comments, but you're also able to pull in from Yelp or apartment ratings or apartments.com, all of these different important review sites, Google, and being able to respond directly inside the platform. You can get a score for each property. You can assign who is responsible for each review, so that way, because sometimes it's great for corporate to respond, but sometimes in a lot of instances, it might be better for the locals to respond because they know more about that situation. So the tech allows you to do that. And then finally, just as we talked about, so that way you can respond to everything, a platform built out, so that way you can see all of your comments, who's liking stuff, who's giving you a direct message, and it's all in a dashboard, and we can set up alerts. What we would love to do now is kind of just open up for questions. If you can just fill them out in the chat. We'd love to see your guys' questions with regard specifically to social media, and Joaquin and I will try and answer those. But the more, at the end of the day, the more you can integrate those two approaches and get at the local level, the higher engagement you'll see, the better response you'll get, and the more welcoming your community looks. When someone goes in, because if you're really catering your feed to the community that you're working in, you're really just inviting, oh, these people understand it, they're fast and responsive. The more people are judging you off of how responsive you are on your social media platform. So the more likely you are to respond, the better you're going to look overall. So if there's no questions,
let me mention one thing. That is how you can go about training with the integrated approach. many do it this way. They start with this complete corporate approach, exercising that control, and then slowly enable others to do it. But first, they train, and it's easier to train than you'd think. Um, it can be as simple as doing one webinar or a call with everybody about posts, how frequently you should post, giving them a dozen or a couple dozen ideas on things that can be posted, and then once you've given them those ideas, have them present them to you or send them to you, their post ideas. You can give them feedback, and that can be the training um, process. Even once you've trained them, um, you can and then we have another question, by the way. You can then still require approvals. They can post through the platform or schedule to social media through the platform, but it may not need to go out unless you approve that post. So there are those types of triggers that are enable you to train easily. It doesn't have to be, uh, a 300 level course. It could simply be giving them some resources and ideas and having them return a couple examples of posts. Once you are comfortable with what they are delivering to you, then you can enable them to start posting. So we had a question. Tim, do you want to address this? How does the Resident Spark software compare to Buffer?
Yeah, Buffer's really, its specialty is in publishing, but it's not for publishing across locations. So this is really, and it's also, this tool is really specializing in really that response aspect, making sure you're responding across all platforms. But really the localization, the fact that we can create a variable, say for example, you want to put your phone number in a post so people can quickly call you. We can create a variable for every single one of your properties, and you would just put that variable in, and then when you publish that out and it goes across every single properties page, they'll have the local correct phone number. So you're not having, so really able to do a lot of these things a lot quicker and at scale. So that's kind of really where this stands out, as well as in the response, being able to really respond across everything else. Joaquin can correct me if I got anything wrong on that one.
No,
But yeah, so
I would just echo the ability to respond at scale and get those kind of notifications is another significant advantage.
well, thank you everybody for joining us today. So we're running a little over time, but just wanted to invite you guys, if you would like to see the software and figure out how you can utilize this in your processes and see if there's a fit, we'd love to schedule a demo to show you, and we can answer any other questions that you might have about social media and review management. There will be a link at the end of this webinar and that you can click on to immediately schedule a demo with us, and we can go from there. And we'll also send out an email afterwards as well. So thank you today. Thank you for your time today, and good luck on your social media in the new year. Have a great day.